Word. Okay, here we are, June 13th, 6:30, 6:35 for the 290 class, going over what we're going to talk about. Money, story, markdown, and a backup of your brain, alliteratively and figuratively. This technology is coming along with a lot of big money from a lot of very rich people who want to live forever. So they're trying to encapsulate their intelligence or their essence into the cloud. And then the last thing I want to touch on is very appropriate for this moment in time. I don't know if you've been following the news, but there has been a interesting problem in the Bitcoin area right now. Coinbase and some of these other big blockchain, shall we say, middlemen that buy and sell and swap coins. There's now an SEC, the Security and Exchange Commission, is starting to clamp down a little bit, just like I knew it would. Now, on the flip side of that, here's another thing that goes right in with those T-bills that we were talking about, or savings bonds, is that the Fed has created a way to do transfers of money instantaneously without the 3-day ACH clearing. And we'll talk about that and the company that they decided to connect with to do that, or the technology they're putting together. So that's kind of how we're going to progress this evening. And of course, we do want to talk about group projects and the if your contract states that if you don't carry your weight, your contract gives the other team members the ability to vote you off the island. And if that's the case, then you have to do a project by yourself with penalty. It's the only way I can really make group projects similar to what the workforce is like. So you kind of have to do it on your own, okay? So, all right, let's finish up the FIRE, Financial Independence, Retire Early. This is a movement of sorts, and the way this works, now this is just one of many places to tap into this information. You can search on Financial Independence, Retire Early, FIRE movement, and literally see hundreds and hundreds of links saying, hey, I have the best idea, I have the best idea, I have the best idea. So there is something to it, and there is something to, you have to weed through the noise, and I'm no financial planner by any means. I'm more conservative, and I go with index funds and call it done. And this book here is why I say, no, seriously, start here. What this book does is it levels your understanding of why you want to work. We all have a job, or will have a job, and some jobs just leave you totally dead at the end of the day, and some jobs leave you invigorated. Why can't we all have an invigorating job? Well, it's not so much the job, it's a lot of different factors. But I actually used this technique from this book for my kids when they were learning how to deal with money. What I had them do is I had them track every single penny that they earned or spent for a month. And then what you do is you create kind of a chart of where all your money goes. And then you have all your lists of spending and all your income. And then you come into this idea of, okay, did this spending make me feel better about spending that money? Or did I do it because I had to? Or am I feeling guilty? Or. This first book, this Money or Your Life, is all about changing your relationship to money. For the most part, people always say, I need more. I need more. I would venture to say you probably don't. Do you know where your money is going? Look at your credit cards, look at all the spending, and are you any happier or dug your way out of debt yet? Everybody falls into the giant credit card debt hole because they make it so easy to fall into. It's hard to get out of it, but there is a way out. And this is what this book, it's been around a long time, and she rewrote it and updated it with a lot of very modern types of things to make things work. So if I was to sit there and draw all my earnings, and I look at all my earnings I've done over my 30 years of working, I can tell you, according to some people would say, hey, you should be a lot further. I said, yeah, if I was in the Bay Area, I probably would be a lot further. But I chose specifically not to go to the Bay Area so I'd have a better work-life balance, okay? And this personal balance sheet is the important starting point. And keeping track of every penny in, every penny out shows you where your money goes. And then you have to track your life energy. This is what it's about. Why am I working so hard? Just so I can spend more money to show off to my friends that I'm making lots of money. That's fine, but there's better ways, I think, to approach this. And that's what this does. It's changing how you approach money. It's a tool, okay? How do you use it? And they walk through various things. You could probably get by just reading the website. And then the second link is actually some pretty good. I really like his approach to the Millionaire Teacher. His whole idea was he retired at what, age 47, age 40? And he was an English teacher. And he was a high school teacher. And he took his story out. He wrote his first book, and he did not expect it to become so popular. And all of a sudden he goes, whoa, what happened? Well, he has a very simple approach to investing. And it's the infamous couch potato portfolio. Basically, you get 3 funds, and he recommends Vanguard because they're low overhead, a stock fund, an international fund, and a bond fund, and redistribute your funds once a year. Ta-da! Retire early. It's not rocket science, but you do have to be educated about it, okay? But that particular book, I've read both of his books. What's interesting is that he's also got this new one about how to build wealth overseas and how to invest in overseas markets. I'm not too interested in that yet. I don't know if I will be, but it's basically rubber meets the road, financial common sense that nobody taught you. Okay. And it's a good book. This one is worth your time to read through it. You can find this in the library. Either version, the newer version is more updated on the funds. And what Vanguard has done is they changed the names of the funds, so you can't follow his stuff cookbook. So you just kind of have to find the name of the fund that does the same thing. No big deal. These big companies change the name of their funds and their allocation, their asset allocation all the time. So it's just part of how they do business. Okay. So that's finishing up the fire. And then the thing I wanted to touch on next here is Markdown. And what we have in Markdown is this is going to be a drop dead simple lab for you guys. I just want you to know what Markdown is. Okay. This is an assignment, very simple assignment. It's a Markdown assignment for a static website. So this is where you learn about Markdown, what it is, getting started. This is a live preview. This makes it so easy. Is that here's your Markdown over here, and that's the web page. That's it. This is how GitHub does their pages. This is how documentation is done in industry anymore. Read the docs. You go to that website, and it's all done in Markdown. There are companies called LeanPub. So if you want to write a novel with the help of GPT, write it all in Markdown and push it to LeanPub, and they will publish it for you for a fee in a gazillion different formats. And if you go through other different vendors, and the company will actually generate an ISBN. Okay. All right. So the particular way of doing Markdown is this is how I do my website. This is Markdown. This is showing you the page source. I did not write that. That's generated from, I use MakeDocs, mkdocs.org, and I have it running on my website. I create the index page and I type it in, and boom, there it goes. Okay. So the reason I want to bring this out is the sub theme to our particular lecture tonight is story. The story you tell yourself, the story you tell others, and how do you capture your story? Well, if you want to capture your story, you can use Markdown, write a book, or write a page, or whatever. I'm asking you to do a very simple, do something. Write a resume, use bogus data. I don't really care. What I want you to do is just kind of spend a little bit of time with this and use GitHub Pages to create your vanity plate in cyberspace, because you're going to be asked for your GitHub account. You're going to be asked for your LinkedIn account. So you can prove you know a few things just by building a static website on GitHub Pages. Okay. Create a learning log. This is how I learned what FIRE was about. This is how I learned what blockchain was about. And you just kind of document what you've been doing. Okay. So that's the Markdown side. Okay. And the next thing I want to move into is this story or die. Now, the author that I'm pointing out here, her name is Lisa Cron. She is a writing instructor and a story coach. She works with people all over the planet to refine their stories, to make the stories more sellable, more palatable. I read her first two books, Wired for Story and Story or Die, from a business perspective. From that perspective, they are some of the best business books I've ever read. Let me tell you why. Okay. All right. So let's think about story here. I will talk a little bit, and then I'm going to play that ad, and then I'll show you her book. Those who tell the stories rule the world. Okay, that's an old Hopi proverb. And the other one I really want to stress is if you don't learn to harness story, you will fall victim to it. Okay. Now, the idea here is, what does story do and why do we care? Let's start with you trying to convince somebody you're right. Okay. I'm right. I know it. I have all the facts. Okay. I know it. Well, guess what? That's not going to work, because this is what happens. When we use facts as a way to convince other people, that what that does is it makes the other person put up their defense. And they have no other response than to shut you down and say, I don't care what you're saying. I don't care if it's right. You're coming at me the wrong way. Okay. Story is how the human race stayed alive. Okay. And okay. So let me find a few of these things that I want to read. Okay. And I've got too many notes here. Okay. Story is actually more crucial to our evolution than our opposable thumbs. All our thumbs do is tell us to hang on. Story tells us what to hang on to. Think about camping trip. Think about sitting around the fire and a bunch of little kids are around the fire, and you say, come on, kids, let's tell a story. We are biologically incapable of defending against a good story. This is why it says those who don't learn to harness story will fall victim to it. And this is happening hook, line, and sinker on both ends of our political spectrum. They're telling you stories that make an emotional response. It cuts through the intellect, and you don't care what the facts are. Now, you're in business. How do you get people to buy your product? How do you say, hey, I want to be able to get my boss to do this big thing? You have to use story. And story requires an element of the storyteller to get inside the shoes of the other person. Shall we call it empathy? Empathy. We have to be empathetic, find out where they're coming from, craft the story to help them see things our way. Okay. This is not evil. This is just the way story works. And we all use story. We think we're rational beings, but there is study after study after study showing we are not. We are hopelessly emotional. Now, let me explain that on a term, on a very base front, a very basic front here. You're listening to the radio, you're staring off into space, you're driving down the freeway at 65 miles an hour, and all of a sudden you slam on the brakes and you don't even know why. What just happened? Well, your body saw something ahead that your conscious mind wasn't even aware of and put on the brakes to save you. Okay. We are emotional creatures, and that emotion keeps us alive. So trying to put all your emotions underneath a rock and ignore them will serve you no good. You'll die young. You have to allow emotions to tell you what they're trying to tell you. Emotions come up and come down like a wave on a sea. Emotions are a fact of life. Sometimes emotions will flare up and going, why am I so pissed off right now? And you have to sit there and figure out why. And you're going, oh, it really has nothing to do with the person in front of me. It's something that happened this morning for whatever reason. Okay. So learning how to listen to what emotions are trying to tell you is what story is about. And on that note, I want to play this ad. I do not know if this will actually get recorded because it's copyrighted, but that's why I put the tab here. Super Bowl ad from 2015. Now, this is profiled in her second book, Story or Die. And it's a very convincing ad. I want you to just watch the ad and make sure I have the volume up. Can you hear it?
Show me what it looks like to run like a girl.
Can you see it?
Show me what it looks like to fight like a girl. Now throw like a girl. Aw. So do you think you just insulted your sister?
No. I mean, yeah, insulted girls, but not my sister.
My name is Dakota, and I'm 10 years old.
Show me what it looks like to run like a girl. Throw like a girl. Fight like a girl. What does it mean to you when I say run like a girl?
It means run fast as you can.
Did you know that that ad actually changed the perception of how people say that? That is a, that's pretty powerful. That's a story that changed culture. Story can be quite powerful. Okay. And this is her book, and there's different ways. Now, she writes this from the point of you want to be an author, you're in business, you need to create a story to get your target audience to buy your product, yada, yada, yada. I read it from the standpoint of, hey, I have management that doesn't listen to me. How can I craft a story so they will? And there are specific guidelines, if you want to call it that. There are tools that you can use to help you put together your story to get your boss to listen to you. Okay. Or, at least consider your idea. Okay. So it's a real deal, and it's true power. So in the hands of the wrong people, they're going to use it for the wrong thing. They're going to use it for their own purposes. Okay. And they're going to get out of it what they're going to get out of it. And so you have to learn how to handle story and say, hey, okay, this story gets to me. Why? What is it about this story that makes it feel real? And I don't think I want to be a part of that story. Something's amiss here. Okay. So that book is also on this labs here. Okay. Now we get into this very interesting little section that I want to bring up. This is actually, in one way, it's a little bit unnerving. I'm going to use this link first. This fellow, Daniel Missler, writes about security and other such things, and I've been following him for several years. Using large language models, human immortality. How many have seen Dark Mirror or Black Mirror? Okay. Yeah, some of you have seen it, some of you haven't. It can be, it's a pretty dystopian thing. But there was one in one episode. I was trying to find it. I don't think it was a Black Mirror, but they took a equivalent of a grandpa's life and they turned him into a grandpa robot, and he treated the grandkids and everything just like he always did. And then at the very end of the show, they show the grandpa robot in the attic just collecting dust. Okay. Are we doing, if we're going to be pitching, in the chat, make them private if you're talking to individual people. But anyway, the human immortality, there's a tremendous amount of money going into this right now. And there are, that's a real thing. This particular company, I'm going to open this here, is actually doing this. This is an article from Vice. And they are actually doing a lot of psychological questions. They use video, they use all sorts of things, and they encapsulate you into a live forever mode in his version of Second Life. Yeah. They're making this real, where you can actually capture somebody who's dead and make them feel like they're alive. What do you think of that? This is what AI will bring to the table. Do we want it to? Would you do it? What story would you tell if you were going to live forever? I personally don't have any desire to do that. A few pictures once in a while, but I have no desire to live forever. Think about how many people have lived and died before us. An awful lot of people that don't have a story. I'm not that special. And here's a 3-part TED Radio Hour that talks about what he's doing, how he's making it work, and people are signing up for this. You can actually, they'll give you a profile of questions, and then they record you, and they get your facial features, they get your sense of humor, and you can live forever. But is it you? No, it's just a copy of you. Is that a good thing? I don't know. Is that a bad thing? I don't know. That's a very interesting something that is in your preview. It's going to be in your wheelhouse. You might be working for a company someday that captures memories and creates an online presence for somebody's Facebook. Who knows? It's there. It's possible. Now, the question is, do you want to do that? Other questions, it's a very interesting something to consider. But his particular slant, this Daniel Mishner, is he, in some sense, he's like me. He likes to read a lot of neuroscience stuff, and he's what makes us us. Now, this, I'm going to give you something that comes from Buddhist thought. Your heartbeat beats, but are you your heart? Your stomach digests food. Are you your stomach? Are your eyes see the world? Are you your eyes? Your brain thinks thoughts. Are you your thoughts? Now, we in the West tend to say yes. The reality is we are just the observer of those thoughts. We can control them to some extent, if with a little practice. But the idea is, if we're not our thoughts, then who are we really? And that's what he's talking about in this article, is what I think I am today is not what I think I am 8 years from now. Your sense of self changes based on your life experience and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, there's really consistency in human behavior. Okay. So we want to put this into AI to make it more human-like. I don't think that's a good idea. But this is something that you could legitimately follow, find companies that are doing this, because there's a lot of people with a lot of money putting money into this, and you can make money on it by buying stock in the companies that are bringing these products to the market. It's one way. I call that eating the emperor's grain. It's an old proverb. So you just kind of see what the rich are doing and you kind of follow along and hopefully get a crumb or two. Okay. This is a big deal. There's a lot of money. And Aubrey Dubray, if you've heard of him, Aubrey Dubray, I'm just massacring his name. Oh, he is a Aubrey. That's not an Aubrey. Let's see here. Live forever. Live forever guy. Oh, that's it. Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. It's Aubrey Digray. Let me paste him in there. Yeah, it's this guy. He actually got into this movement very, very long time ago. And he said way back in the 90s that aging is an engineering problem. And he's a convincing storyteller, and he gets a lot of people to bring money in to do things that delay aging. Okay. And there's a lot of people that are putting money into it. So if you want to really find out, this is the guy to follow. He's kind of like the grandfather of it all. And it's a very interesting mashup between human mortality and our desire to live forever. I personally, I don't know. Everybody has their own beliefs on this. I am not a big fan of living forever. I think there's a time to call things done. Okay. But anyway, you now have more information you care to know about when it comes to really weird esoteric things about living forever in the day of AI, because we can now do this with ChatGPT. Given the correct prompts, you can have somebody sound like you, i.e. deepfakes sounding like you. Yeah. Here we go. This is what prompted tonight with one of the topics was this, is that how do we do this? How would we do this to make it work effectively? Okay. I don't know. There's a lot of things that this is what they do. They're taking all this stuff and then given enough money, yes, they can do it. Yeah, that's part of the aging is the telomeres. That's not the complete picture. There's other pieces. You can slow aging down by increasing the length of your telomeres. The most effective way to do that is to meditate. Well, Jimmy Carter also was, he had brain cancer, and they used basically an allergy shot against the cancer, specifically designed for his cancer, and it went into remission. So he was like a guinea pig, and that opened up a huge door for specific cancer treatments. Let's say you have Joe average cancer, let's say cancer of the mouth. They can take an antibody of that, turn it into, it's called immunotherapy, and boom. It's like, yeah. So it depends. There's a lot of things are coming down in cost. And just look who controls the gates. That's usually how you can tell. Okay. Now, interesting things in the day of AI. Now to change channels rather abruptly. Yeah, Ripple, Coinbase. All right. Yep, this is a deal. The Security Exchange Commission is going after Ripple, and they're going after Coinbase. They're going after a few other of these companies because the people that are making money in the currency exchanges on, we'll just call them altcoins, are the whales. They're not the little guy. And that's part of what's raising the SEC's higher. It's going to happen that it gets regulated at some point. But this is something I want to show you. I want you to notice the date. What does this do? Why do you care? How many have heard of ACH, the automatic clearinghouse, when you send money from one bank to another bank? In the old days, you would write a check, and the check would go to the person, and the person would take the check and go to their bank. The two banks would sit there and talk to each other through an ACH clearinghouse to verify that the money was in your account, and then that money gets transferred to their account. 1 to 3 business days. It still takes 1 to 3 business days to move money from your checking account to Venmo to PayPal and back again. Okay. This would change it to instantaneous between banks. This is not for you and me. This is for big commercial entities. This is for bank-to-bank transactions. And this is the part that really got my attention. They have a product that they are working on right now to do this Fed now, send receive function, i.e. Fed bank to another Fed bank. We need to reconcile our books. We don't need 3 days now. We're reconciled in seconds. That's going to reduce overhead dramatically. This is around it allows for. That's huge. That's a game changer. That I did a lot of financial programming. This is big. This is big. Now, here's the other fun thing is this. So they can actually make this a ledger on the blockchain, knowing which bank went to which bank, and they know how to do this. And they're using this concept of stable coins. Okay. Now, this is pretty, and this is where you get the the criticism is based on ignorance. All this is doing is replacing ACH. Okay, that's it. It's making things faster. But here's the eating emperor's grain part. It's a product with a stock ticker. And you can go learn about it. You can build it. You build your own, create smart. You can create smart contracts. This is the part that really got my eyebrows going. Anybody know what EVM is? That is the Ethereum virtual machine. So that means you do not have to reinvent the wheel to run this stuff. When you run Ruby, when you run JavaScript, when you run Python, when you run Perl, when you run Bash, when you run any interpreted language, it creates a virtual machine. And that virtual machine runs in RAM and does its thing. So does blockchain. So this Ethereum virtual machine, and this is what it's for. And this is like brand new. Now, which ones do you want? And guess what, folks? This would be worth your time to look into. You want a job in finance? Learn this one, because this is what's going between bank to bank. You want to work at Wall Street? Yeah. This is how, yeah. I would highly recommend learning this, because they have been talking about bringing a Fed coin to the masses for a while now. China does it. Sweden does it. A couple countries in Africa do this. It's where you can have a fiat, and I'll put that in the chat, fiat currency. And what this means is fiat means it's fake. You and I agree that that piece of paper that has the $1 on it is worth so much. There's no real value in that piece of paper. And this is what people have been arguing about. Oh, we should have never left the gold standard. And I said, it doesn't matter. We've been trading wampum, beads, shells, jewelry, because it's perceived value on both sides of the equation, economics 101, okay? This whole thing is an optimization for what's already there, but it's new and shiny, and there's going to be a lot of money in it, because you always get more money if you're on the front side of a technology rather than on the trailing side of the technology. Okay. And this is breaking. This is what you would call a breaking technology that I would definitely spend time. I'm going to be spending time on this anyway, just because I want to know how this works, because if PayPal gets it and Venmo is owned by PayPal, I would love to get the money to get instantaneously go between my bank and PayPal. So when I have to pay my kids money, they don't have to wait 3 days. I would really like to be able to do that. So I want to learn about this, just because I've got money transactions where I think would be helpful. So this is a big deal. And you can see it, JP Morgan, these big companies are looking into it. So now we get to learn a whole new layer of technology. What is layer 0 solution when it comes to blockchain? I have no idea. Layer 0 in the physical network simply means the cables that go across the ground. I don't know what layer 0 means for blockchain. So there's a glossary here that needs to be figured out. Now, people have asked me, have you invested in Bitcoin? No, never did. Don't regret it. Because when I saw that there was only a handful of players controlling 80% of the Bitcoins, I knew the game was going to be rigged. So, you know, no, I don't want to play in a game where the Leonard Cohen song, the game is rigged, but we still play, you know. All right. But this developers, they give you the documentation, what you can do. I just started to do this. Okay. Just started learning about it. And I don't know what this validator means. I don't know. Is this mean that you're validating transaction? Does it have the equivalent of mining where you set this up and make money? I don't know. If so, don't do it on the work computers or the MJC computers. It could cost the entire lab its existence. Because if indeed you can make money on this, run it on your machine at home and find out if it really does. I don't think, I don't know enough about it yet to find out, but what it looks like it does is it just validates the transactions in a distributed format, okay? Because the proof of stake versus proof of work, when Ethereum made that big cutover, everybody was worried that the Ethereum contracts would all break. I have a lot of respect for the main programmer of Ethereum. The guy is a freaking genius. He is too smart for his own good. Very, very intelligent. And he's built this thing and he's done some pretty amazing things in code. And so moving from proof of work to proof of stake reduced the overall energy cost dramatically. And that's the problem. Okay. No, this is not what this is about. This is not what this is about. This is changing the validation of the ACH, the automatic clearinghouse. You yourself can't do this. You cannot run a transaction from Square for $1 on the metal chain. Okay. It's further up the food chain. It's what the big banks do. Okay. And having a ledger, and they do have a ledger and accountability that goes in there. That's why they talk about stress testing banks. So that's what it's about. 0% interest, that's the delay. Well, learn what interest is and how to make it work for you. You can never beat the big guys, but you can make it so they don't eat your lunch. Okay. But this is definitely something that you might want to look into. And what is going to happen, in my view, is it's going to be so quiet, so seamless, you won't even notice. Because ACH is old school. ACH back in the 80s was called the Sterling Clearinghouse. You actually had to create a document called a PO, called Electronic Document Interchange of a PO, to go to Sterling. And that would go to Sterling, and Sterling would wait for the appropriate invoice EDI from your vendor that would go to Sterling. They would reconcile it. And at the end of the month, they would tell you how much money you had to send to company A, company B, and how much money you got from company A and company B. ACH sped that process up. You don't do EDI anymore. That's when we moved into financial EDI, where people, the pilot flying his Southwest Airlines lands, he says, okay, fill me up. And he pulls the credit card out of the overhead and hands it to the guy who charges the credit card from Southwest for the fuel. No more middleman called Sterling. This Fed now is removing the ACH middleman. So it's just another optimization. Will it affect jobs? I don't know. It'll probably create as many as it destroys, but it will be different. But those are the things I wanted to touch base on tonight. And so what we were doing is, and here, in no particular order, the financial independence, retire early, understand the power of story, use story to create Markdown, or use Markdown to create your story. And then do you want to create a backup of you? And we talked a little bit about blockchain and the Fed now, and a little bit about that. That to me is utterly fascinating, because this is going to be interesting to see what happens. And my personal bet is you won't hear anything about it. Okay. All right. And no, I don't know anything about commodities, so don't even bother. If you want to, don't, yeah, I don't know anything about commodities. Okay. So your homework for this lecture is simply do the Markdown. And on my closure, I want to bring up something a little lighthearted and fun. Let me see if I got it up here. Okay. How many have heard of the magazine Wired magazine? Wired Mag. Okay. At the end of the last page, they always have write a sci-fi story in 6 words. Okay. And here's a couple of them. Tell me your story. You have 6 words. For sale. Baby shoes. Never worn. Played golf. Boss won. Kept job. Failed SAT. Lost scholarship. Invented rocket. Wrong number, said a familiar voice. Google, how to inflate a life raft. And here's some other fun ones that are more, I would say, esoteric. Why is emptiness so heavy? I died yesterday. Something is wrong here. This holy ground burns my feet. Time traveler dies tragically, 1970 to 1775. Torched the haystack, found the needle. Breaking. Simulated beings realize they're simulated. And my favorites are on my website. Seize the day. Don't leave bruises. Fail fast. Understand why. Learn faster. it's kind of fun to do these 6-word stories because I'll go ahead and just paste these in the chat. And so you can copy them and play with them. There is a whole, you can look up 6-word stories all over the place, and there's variations on this. There's 7-word stories, 13-word stories, and this is all based off what's the Zen haiku, which is a 17-syllable saying. But this is just 6 words, and they don't count syllables. But I think they're kind of fun, and it's a good way to distill your story. If you want to say, okay, my boss doesn't understand what I want to do, maybe I can distill it down into 6 words or something small, like maybe a paragraph, and try to get my thought across. Like that first one, you don't need, whoops, that didn't work out too well. Let me copy that one again. You don't need much of an imagination to understand where that's coming from. That says a lot. This one has been attributed to Ernest Hemingway. This one was attributed to William Shatner, Mr. James T. Kirk here. Okay. He also wrote several sci-fi novels around tech. I think they were called TEK. So they weren't too shabby. They're actually pretty good. But some of the other ones are just kind of fun. Yeah, they're fun. Okay. So I have a bunch of these that I've been collecting just because they're fun. This is one I've been working on this one when it returns. And somebody talks about programming. I like to use this one. Because when you're programming, you deal with mind-crushing frustration, you fix the bug, and you get that rush until the next bug comes along. Okay. That was not quite done, but you can see it's a work in progress. Yeah. Yes, oh, yeah, direct message. Yes. All right. Okay. All right. So on that note, I will open for questions regarding team dynamics. If we're having some issues, we can chat, we can talk offline, we can, you can send me an email, we can set up a phone appointment, a Zoom appointment, whatever you want to do to talk about it. Because I know every semester there's always an issue of somebody not carrying their weight in projects. And that's just the nature of things. All right. And let me go here. Run the meeting. Let's see, participants. Here we go. All right, there's the participants. Okay. All right. Okay. Is this a direct message? No. What are you asking, Charlie? Here, let me see here. All right. I'm going to stop the recording. Then